All right, hey everyone. I'm here with Dr. Matt Paulson from MarketBeat. How you doing, Matt?
Good. Happy to be here again.
Yeah, great to have you back. I wanted to get your take on a whole bunch of things. Your perspective on the industry is a really great one because you kind of see all the external that's going out through the various CPA offers and things like that. And we've had a lot of change.
Yeah, it's September of this year versus January are just two very different environments, and what's working has changed, what's hot has changed. The election has created a giant distraction. Obviously, some
Mhm.
big changes at market-wise.
Yeah,
Crowdfunding has really taken off. Just a lot of different things happening that's really shaken up the apple cart.
yeah. So it's almost like it's not like one major thing. There's been a ton of major changes. So, I mean,
Yep.
how would you like basically characterize then like January to now, like the shift then?
Yeah, it's definitely a weaker environment. I heard from a few people kind of that first quarter is probably the best quarter a lot of people ever had. And now we're almost starting to look like some of the 2022 numbers again, where for us, we're probably down 25-30% top line
Hmm.
Q1 compared to Q3. And it's just a more challenging environment. And I think the election has something to do with that. The changes at MarketWise certainly haven't helped. Just the conversion environment's weaker than it was.
Yeah, yeah. And so with the for people who maybe not as aware of like everything that happened at MarketWise, which is that, I mean, you had the legacy shutdown, and then you had um, changes in Porter came in, came out,
Hmm.
a lot of disruption there, a lot fewer offers coming out
Hmm.
um, in
And I
general.
mean, I think the big thing was that their initial price points, the company decided that their kind of front end initial cart was going to be $200 up from maybe 70. And
Yeah,
that's definitely going to impact your number of conversions.
right, right. So it's a big kind of like impact since they were probably the largest external advertiser for the last year or two, at least.
Yeah, for a lot of people, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So then, um, when you think about like the just kind of like the impacts then from kind of a weaker environment, changes at MarketWise and all that, like what do you think are like how's that impacting everybody else? How's that impacting
Mhm.
kind of what's working for people, what they're doing, like strategy? I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot changing.
Mhm. Yeah, right now with the election, it does seem like the political angles are working really well on copy.
Hmm.
We've seen Porter and Company and Weiss and Behind the Markets do really well with some different political angles. All of the gold companies are really using political angles, and they're having a lot of success with that. And I think that probably dies down after the election, but right
Hmm.
now it seems to be one of the things that's working well.
Yeah, no, I think that's like the gold connection with politics when gold is hot has always been strong.
Hmm.
I know that Paradigm had that order that promo doing like a just 500 to 1,000 orders a day at one point.
Yep.
And then Porter's been he's been pretty consistent, right?
Mhm.
As a publisher, talking about kind of more political kind of conversations, which has worked well for him.
Yeah, it's like you have to either do it consistently or never at all. Because if
Yeah,
you don't talk about politics, then you start talking about politics, your audience may not like that because you you listen to Taylor Swift for her music, then all of a sudden she starts talking about politics, and you say, "Hey, I like your music, but I don't really need to hear your political opinions." And I think that can be true with kind of FinPub too. Like if I'm here for your investment opinions, not your political takes, and if you go from not doing that to doing that, I think some people might not like that.
yeah, it's definitely one of those message mismatches. If you're not, it's either part of your ethos or it's not.
Yep.
And if it is, it's great when it's around, but it's not always great.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of those things that if you have a particular ethos, like you just have to accept there's times when it's hotter than other times. And election
Yeah.
years are 1 out of every 4 years, so not
Mhm.
not like it works this well every year.
Yeah.
But that kind of market-wise raising their prices on the front end, I mean, obviously it impacts their total number in the door.
Hmm.
But the the kind of general trend also seems to be a little bit of this. that high volume kind of like, I'm not so worried about churn approach to acquisition versus
Mhm.
has changed too, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot of people that will purchase a $50 product that may never purchase a $200 product, right?
Mhm.
And I think for a while the game was to see, okay, how many people can we just get in the door? And that was certainly the game in 21, and obviously cooled off in 22, but it kind of came back in 23 of like, what is that initial checkout price that makes sense? And
Mhm.
I think for a lot of people it's still at 79 to $99, but if your company is struggling with new sales and profitability, like maybe you try that 199 entry price point and see if you can pay for your customer acquisition cost in day one. And the we don't really try to do that. For us, like we're lucky to break even after 90 days, and we're happy with that. But
Yeah.
things are tight, like I would just try to cut back on the stuff that doesn't work and doesn't break even as quickly, right?
Right. Right. And that's I mean, the smaller pubs have, I'd say, like they don't have as much, well, they can't handle the risk as high as some of the larger
Correct.
ones, obviously. So scaling up, I mean, I don't know. I hesitate to say that it's better to go a higher price when you're smaller, because there's so much variability. But it definitely seems like we're seeing more of that, like kind of drive to like, hey, maybe I can, get a higher price point on the front end, and it makes my media buying work
Mhm.
sooner. It just, there's not the scale that you would have as you
Yeah.
as you go lower. So,
That is
um,
that is the big trade-off. When you're working with people like Charles Flagel and George Meekum and ourselves, like we're gonna send out the thing that makes us the most money all day, every day, right? If something is a higher price point, we're gonna see lower conversions. We're making less money, so we're probably not gonna send out the volume we would otherwise. So you
right.
have to find that balance of like what number makes sense for you as a publishing business, but also what numbers will make sense for the people who are sending you your customers.
Yeah. Yeah. And so but you bring up, Charles and George, and um, I'm I don't say surprised. I'm a little surprised actually. In the Discord, you guys have been sharing like which offers work for you versus what their
Mhm.
hot offers are, and there's a lot more variability in there than I would have expected.
Yeah, my hunch would have been that we all had kind of the same top offers, but that's not really the case. And I think that what that says is that like those guys use different kind of channels than we do on acquisition. They're both very big into AdWords, and we're not as big into AdWords.
Hmm.
So it just tells me, we've got different lists with different interests, and that's good because that means we're not just all trying to send the same people to the same advertisers.
Yeah. And so how would you characterize as somebody who's like, hey, like I'd love to be able to target your traffic better and deliver something for you that can get a lot more scale.
Mhm.
What kind of offers would you say in kind of thematics work really well for you?
For Market Beat, the stuff that really kind of tells a story and gives a glimpse into the future, or what the future might be like Californication early in the year just crushed it, like nothing has had since 2019.
Hmm.
But it gave people a glimpse into like this is what a year from now might be like. Maybe neither Biden or Trump is president, and they didn't get Gavin Newsom right, but like who thought we were going to have Kamala Harris as a presidential candidate a year ago? Like it didn't seem like a possibility, but they really pointed you in that direction and said, "Oh, this really could happen, and here's why," and it kind of did happen.
Right.
Uh, so like that kind of stuff works really well. The storytelling is really important. The kind of here's what the future looks like really is important, but then also kind of that personal relationship where it's not like here's something that might happen. It's got to be like a person with an opinion. Like if Porter Stansberry sends you a personal letter or what looks like a personal letter, um, people just engage with that more than like some generic copy that looks like it's an advertisement. Like
Yeah.
I think people still do want that personal connection to a publisher. Like
Hmm.
they say, I'm this person's guy, and like I really like their stuff. And like you have to develop that personal brand as a financial publisher so that you can kind of have that connection. And like, this week, Porter had a bunch of people out to his farm, his customers, like for a live event for 2 days. And, you know, not many people are doing that, right? Like, but, you want to give your best people that kind of access they're looking for so they can continue to develop that personal connection.
Yeah, I do think that the people overlook especially newer people in the industry, they overlook the power of the guru and the relationship, and how,
Mhm.
I mean, even this was true throughout the history of FinPub, but with like the rise of social media, I mean, everything is personality. Everything is
Mhm.
personality now. And so like to not have personality in the promo seems like a missed opportunity for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
But
I do think there's a disconnect with, some of the bigger gurus over the years have really kind of fallen short on their personal brand outside of like their publications. Like if you're going to be that expert and talking about a subject you know a lot about and have a publication where you're charging for it, like you should be on podcast, you should be on Twitter, you should be on some of the platforms talking about some of the same things.
mm-hmm.
So that Tika Tori, like in his publications, like versus like him elsewhere on the internet, like I don't want to say like he just on Twitter, like, there's not much of a presence. On
Yeah.
other platforms, there's just not much of a presence. Like if you're going to advertise yourself as like, I'm the expert, I know a ton about this topic and I can inform
Mm-hmm.
you about it and teach you about it, like you got to be the other places too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people are nervous sometimes too, because Twitter is not a kind place.
Mm-hmm.
And people have no problem calling you out on stuff, but I think that's not fundamentally negative
Yeah.
if you're doing good stuff. But no, I think you're right on and I think it also goes to a little bit to the way that we would build gurus in the past,
Mm-hmm.
since they never had any direct conversation, right? It's all the copywriter filtered kind of stuff. Um, you could take somebody who didn't have as much personality and build them up bigger, but if they're not out there, nowadays it's harder to kind of hide that.
Yeah. I think like somebody who's doing a really good job with this is Doomberg.
Yes.
He's anonymous, and a lot of people, including me, kind of know who he is. But um, and he will speak at an event every now and then as long as there's no cameras. But I mean, he's got a Twitter account with 40 million followers. He does podcast interviews, and but he's still got the paid subscription offering,
Mhm.
and it's probably making several million a year doing that.
Yeah, I think I mean, this is conjecture, but from talking to people at Substack and other places, I think they're around 4 to 5, doing really
Yeah,
well. Like they're one of the best ones on Substack, if
that's
not
the
the
number
best.
I kind of heard too, but I didn't know if that number was public or not. So.
Yeah, I've heard. I mean, it is now. I've heard enough people. I mean, I don't have any direct knowledge of it. I just have lots of people who've been using that number that seem to be familiar with their business, and so maybe it's not
Mhm.
quite accurate, but they're doing a great job for sure.
Mhm.
Uh, and like you mentioned before, like the crowdfunding is picked up and things like
Yeah.
that. Like, so how have you seen that space develop this year for you?
Yeah, really, the reggae kind of stuff is really taking off, and a lot of that has to do with Dealmaker.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they have done a nice job of kind of being I don't know, the agency that sits in between people like MarketBeat and kind of these companies that want to raise money. And I don't know everything they do, but they have come to us. They're picking up talent. They've come to us with a lot of companies and said, "Hey, we're trying to do a deal with this company, and do you think you could drive some, drive some interest?" And they're working. I mean, this is honestly, it's not like what excuse me,
No
it's
worries.
not what IR was in like 2021, but for there to be five, six, seven different reggae companies kind of out there at once, looking to buy traffic like that, that's pretty meaningful. Um,
And they're buying a lot. Like it's not
they
small
are. I
spend.
mean, it's they picked up Georgia from Strike Point, and
Mm-hmm.
she's done a nice job of making those connections again, and they've got a lot of volume.
Yeah, no, I think like Rebecca and those guys over there, Jonathan Stid, on the marketing side, they have done like a really great job, kind of because they realize that in order for the crowdfunding and reggae raises to work, you need distribution and
Yeah,
digital distribution, and without it, it doesn't work. So they did a great job like building out that capacity. Um,
yeah.
And so,
Mobile's still out there doing a bunch of direct buys too. They're
mhm,
kind of a little bit unique in that they're, you know, really trying to go through as many direct channels as they can.
yeah,
We've seen a lot of volume from them and as well.
yeah, nice. So I wanted to ask you too, like you test. It seems like you test almost everything that comes out when people are putting offers out. You're willing to
Mhm.
test everything. Um, what do you see as kind of some of the big problems that people are having from conversion standpoint? Like, what are they doing wrong? Not anyone
Hmm.
specific, maybe, but you've got to see a lot of things that like this stuff never works, or like we'll test this, but it doesn't work probably, and
Mhm.
sure enough, it doesn't. Like, what do you see from that side, or what's your perspective on that?
Yeah. Um, I think we've kind of gotten lazy on copy as an industry. And it seems like a lot of people will just want to do a spray and pray approach of like, here's 20 lifts, test them all and to see which one works versus like, let's really like study what's working now. And like,
Mhm.
it's not hard. Like you can get on the market list, you can get on some of the other lists that are out there and sign up and see what copy is being sent out over and over again. And that tells you what's working, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we'll have people send us like 20 lists and say, run some of these. And like, okay, but like, we're not going to send 20 lists.
Right.
So which ones are good? So I think if we did some more work on like really trying to write good emails on the front end versus like trying to just write a bunch of them and see which ones are good, I think that is important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Definitely. Anything
and
else?
um, I think there's probably a little bit too much trend chasing of like AI was hot 6 months ago, so there are people like just now coming out with AI stuff. Like, uh, NVIDIA peaked for at least in the near term and is kind of coming back down. And
Mm,
like that's kind of that's a trend that's already come and gone, right?
right.
So it's you kind of got to be ahead of that curve a little bit and like don't worry about like what people in FinPub are doing now. Like worry what people are talking about on in the news and on Reddit and kind of
Hmm.
in the culture today. Like that's one thing Porter Stansbury does really well. Of like as soon as like JD Vance got elected, like he had this I don't know, creative like I don't know the email title was like here's the real hillbilly elegy or whatever it was,
Yeah.
and
I
like
remember
he
that.
was he was like right on top of that. But
Yeah.
you got to base your promos and your copy and your creative based off like here's what's happening in the news today versus like here's the thing that worked 6 months ago that everyone else
Hmm.
is still running.
Yeah, and that's that. Like, people need a speed the production on things to catch up with that. But also, like I remember Brian Hunt talking about like kind of the in one sense the business is figuring out where the attention is um, publicly and trying to steer into that
Mhm.
constantly. And so like this year has all been political things. It's been news around that, and we know that the customer base on the newsletter side in particular is that older conservative guy, um, and so that's like kind of where they've been versus the, and it also has, I think, a nice component of there's an emotional piece of that when it comes to politics. People are heavily invested, and so like you're getting like agreement from a lot of folks if you have this if you're kind of aligning with that. But
Mhm.
um, I do think you're right that the kind of the swipe mentality in FinPub has gotten overdone, where it's like we'll
Mhm.
just look at what somebody else trying, we'll just try that, versus having like a real perspective as a publisher,
Mhm.
um, and writing promo for that based on what's going on in the world.
Yeah, I think one person who's done a good job of kind of not falling for I don't know whatever the hot thing is and kind of doing their own thing really well lately is Tim Sykes and kind of the stocks to trade website. Like they've built a fantastic website. Like they've must put hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars in that. But anybody in our space that hasn't been to like stockstotrade.com lately should go check it out because like it's really good and like
Hmm.
that's a great website to study and say like okay this is the bar. Let's try to get there.
Yeah, and they've done a real, and their business is doing really well too. I mean, I don't hear a lot of people right now. I mean, more than last year, um,
Mhm.
who are putting up really good numbers, but they've been doing some pretty substantial numbers and are in a great spot too.
Mhm.
Uh, but do you see more of the like investment versus trading kind of
Mhm.
stuff like stocks to trade now, or do you see a good mix of both, or uh,
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's still a big mix of gold, both. The thing that's really taken off is the gold offers, and those firms have gotten really competitive with each other, and they'll pay $39 all day long for somebody to fill out a lead form, and
yeah,
that can add up pretty quickly.
and that's like the gold IRA kind of firms and things like that, or
Yeah, like Priority Gold, Golden Crest,
Mhm.
Goldco, and they're all kind of doing the same thing, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's definitely a space that's growing. I think Jeremy Blossom was on the market call yesterday, and he was saying the same thing that they're I think he's working at Advantage Gold, and they were paying something like that,
Mhm.
$39 to $40 a lead. Um, so that's substantial. I mean, that's
Yeah,
very substantial.
I mean, another big trend for us this year is like doing lead gen for other companies has been an increasingly large part of our universe. Like there are a lot of companies that want to buy kind of the $5 click to opt-in leads. That way, like, maybe, I want to build a financial publishing company. I need to build my universe, my audience, but maybe I'm not 100% sure like the current offer is like this the thing that's going to like generate a ton of sales. So a lot of people are moving towards like, well, I'd just rather get these people on my free newsletter.
Hmm.
And then that way I can, if this thing doesn't work, it's on the next thing or the next thing. So we've seen a lot more of that this year, a lot more kind of lead share type deals.
Hmm.
That's been a growing trend for us.
For somebody who wants to do that with you guys,
Mhm.
what's kind of the threshold of spend for them to get in there?
Um, our starting point for anybody who want to work with is probably 25K a month these days.
Yeah,
We have, at least probably 40 people that do that on volume. So, we just can't be dealing with people that have like a 5 or 10K a month kind of budget.
yeah,
So that's kind of the starting number. I mean, whether
sure,
it's CTO or whether it's anything.
yeah.
I mean, like sometimes you meet somebody at FMS and they're brand new, like maybe you're going to give them a chance, but for an ongoing relationship, we're really looking for kind of 25 as a starting point.
Nice. Okay. That's good to know. So you've been obviously you've been doing this for a very long time, right? Like what,
Yeah.
2005, 2006 you started MarketBeat, you
Yeah.
said?
My Google AdSense account dates back to December 26th of 2006. So that's kind of in my mind the starting date of the business.
So you've seen a lot of change and
Mhm.
you've seen more change this year. Um, how do you look at what do you think about, beyond this year, we've had a ton of changes in the industry. We've had a bunch of
Mhm.
things happen. Like I think there's, new sectors coming up like the reggae space and things like that. So when you're
Mhm.
talking about like kind of this like retail media world, like what do you see out there right now? What are you thinking, whether it's I know this is going to happen or I'm just watching this other trend? Like how do you think things are changing here beyond just like this month?
Yeah. It,
Big
it,
open-ended question.
yeah. Big open-ended question. Yeah, I think it's going to be harder to buy media in the next few years.
Yeah.
We saw this year a bunch of people had their AdSense accounts or AdWords accounts get banned for whatever reason. So maybe election year, maybe not. But I think the bar in the future is going to be like to have a real brand.
Hmm.
There are a lot of people out there, including some of our good friends, that have, maybe financial websites, but maybe it's a brand nobody's ever heard of. I think it's going to be tougher and tougher to operate that way. I think you really have to be like a real brand that has faces associated with it and social media accounts and like a physical address and like a picture of your team. And, um, you know, I think the bar on
Yeah.
like what people are willing to like put up with, especially from Google's new search algorithm is very focused on like brand search, like the number of people that like type in MarketBeat in Google.
Hmm.
So if like you're a no-name website, obviously nobody's going to be typing in the name of your brand. You're not going to get any organic traffic.
Yeah.
Um, so I think
I,
it's
I'm
brand is a huge trend.
That's an interesting. So I've been thinking about that trend too, but like I was thinking about it not because I'm not a media buyer and I never considered it from that perspective.
Mhm.
I've been thinking about it from like kind of customer relationship and marketing side, and how like I think that the same thing, like the opportunities to build a brand that kind of stakes out a position in the market and kind of like builds an ongoing audience, and that's where you're trying to get a customer who stays longer, has a higher LTV, maybe is a little more qualified. Um, but I hadn't considered that aspect of it too.
Mhm.
So that does seem then from multiple directions that
Yeah.
building a brand and what
Mhm.
that means for people, because I think a lot of people in direct
Yeah.
response have always kind of had a negative idea on brand, like, oh, it's a wasted thing and it's not sales and this and that, but um, it does matter and
Oh, absolutely. And even
matters
from
more and
like
more.
we have an SMS short code and we know people that couldn't get approved for one because they're like, who are you? Like, are you a company? Are you real? So like if you want access into all of the things that like allow you to become a scalable company, like when your vendors Google you, like they want to know that John Newton's a real person and he has a real company and there's a real office somewhere with real people inside. And
Yeah. I'm blown away when I look up people in the space and look at their websites, and like I could not, if I didn't know that it
Mhm.
was their business, I would have no idea who ran it. Like that blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, we try to hit the bar for that. If you go to like markme.com/about, like you see a picture of our office, you see all of our team members, you see some of the community projects we've been involved with. Like anybody that's like working at Google and like looking at our AdWords account and say, who is this company, is going to look at that and say, oh, yeah, they're legit. I mean, these are real people, and I can
Right.
go to their LinkedIn profiles and see all their writers. Like it
Yeah, and
passes the bar.
you do a great job on social yourself, like across multiple platforms. Like you're really solid on there
Mhm.
um too. So uh it's like it almost it's it's business, but like every year
Mhm.
that goes by, there's more tasks that a business has to do to kind of do well, right? Doesn't it seem like there's
Mhm.
just more and more things that we have to do? You have to be better at more aspects of the business than you used
Yeah.
to have to be. Like 10 years ago, um, it was really easy to kind of throw something up there and
Mhm.
throw some webinars out and buy some cheap media.
But I mean, there's also some real benefits from like doing that work of like when we post a job application, 50 people will apply every time. And like we
Wow,
get DMs on everything saying, hey, I'm a copywriter, I'm this. Can I come work at MarketBeat? I'd love to work for you. And like, it makes it really easy to find talent too.
that's huge. I mean, that's huge. So, no, I love that. Love that perspective. Um, and then I guess what am I not? Because I love how obviously I think very differently than you in general in
Mhm.
terms of how I think. You have a much better perspective on a lot of things, and you look at the world differently. Um, what are you thinking? Is there anything that you're thinking about in the industry that I'm not even talking about or thinking about? Like, are there any areas where like you're like, like I remember on our previous conversation, you talked about how having like the ability to do actual software development is becoming increasingly important. And I thought that was
Mhm.
totally spot on. Um,
Well,
anything
I think
else?
there's the other, I don't know, thing that I'm thinking about these days is kind of the concept of platform risk. And you like some of it is obvious. Like my Google AdWords account gets banned, like that's risk because I'm too dependent on Google. But we learned this week like there's platform risk with WordPress. WP Engine, like the biggest WordPress hosting provider, like is in like a feud with Matt Mullenweg, the guy that started WordPress, and Matt Mullenweg's trying to shake down WP Engines. Now, if you're like on WP Engine with WordPress, like you can't get updates to your WordPress, and like it's going to get hacked. Like so you got to be really mindful of like what companies you're being dependent on and like what your risks are there and how to mitigate
Yeah.
them. And I think there's going to be more platform risk in more places that we haven't really thought about. Um, I really think that's going to be more true with some of the email service providers too. Uh, I don't, I probably don't want to name names, but there's one that's been making a lot of noise lately, and doing a lot with their software in a short period of time. And um, when you write code fast and loose, things often break. And I think that's has happened and will continue to happen with some ESPs that are making a lot of waves right now.
Interesting, interesting. Um, yeah, I had I used WP Engine. I didn't realize that. That's scary.
Yeah. So back everything up. Have copies of your
Yeah.
email list that like aren't in your ESP.
Hmm.
You can back up your ad creative on AdWords. Like anything that like is on somebody else's server that you don't have, like try to get a backup of it.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. So in the platform risk, we've seen, you know, the biggest one was still like you said, Google AdWords when Agora got kicked off for 2 years on
Mhm.
Facebook and Google. And that was devastating in some ways. They found ways around it, but still, like that definitely happens. And do you think? I mean, I guess that's kind of like the that brand issue is really relevant there. I feel like because I feel like a lot of times like these decisions are not being. It's not like Mark Zuckerberg is looking at your
No.
ads on Facebook, right? It's a staff member who's looking at it, and they are not entrepreneurs, they are not marketers, they are not whatever. They've got a job, they're an employee, they have who knows what kind of beliefs about business or marketing that you have. You're gonna have there's thousands of them, so you're gonna have all kinds of them. And so, like, if they look at your site and they're like, "Oh, this guy's a scammer," um,
Mhm.
you're at much higher risk than if they look at your site and like, "Oh, this is just a you know a good business." And
Mhm.
for the longest time, I feel like the Motley Fool is the one publisher who did a really great job building a brand.
Mhm.
Investor Place did a really good job too.
Yep.
And then now I think Stansberry Market Wise has moved there, but like Motley Fool definitely stands out as one that you know.
Yeah. I mean, the founders' names are all over the website. It's a established brand. But Motley Fool does really well is they advertise on like places that other people don't. And like they advertise on Quora. Nobody advertises on Quora. Like I couldn't even get approved on Quora. And like,
That's
um,
interesting.
so,
Interesting.
and I see their names like whenever I think I found like some new innovative like marketing thing, like Motley Fool is already doing it. Like they have done a really good job of like finding like advertising channels that like people outside of our industry have used and like been successful with and like
Mhm.
making it work in FinPub when other people can't make it work in FinPub. So yeah, I heard at one point they were doing like 40 million a year in advertising spend, which is really impressive.
Yeah, yeah, they've done a lot of really interesting things over the years, and they've adapted to. I remember they had a blog network because that was one of the things that allowed you to get into to Yahoo News back in the day. And then when all those kind of news sites stopped taking blog networks, they just kind of shut it down because the whole point wasn't to have the blog network. The whole point was to have the traffic. Um,
Yep.
and so they've been really like good at like these kind of big picture
Mhm.
moves on traffic.
Yeah. The other big traffic thing we're working on right now is really syndication of how do we get market beat in more places. And, we've got a guy working kind of full time on like how many different places can we get market beats news content just to show up. And like, I don't even
Mhm.
care if the content's on our website. Like I want people reading our stuff, whether it's on the market beat website or NASDAQ. Like there's a
Mhm.
new stock splits competitor launching soon called Traderverse.
Yeah.
I think it's called Traderverse. But I don't know. They've got some interesting. It's yeah. I guess it's Traderverse.io, but um, they've got some interesting stuff, and like they're going to launch soon, and like we're going to be on there on day one, and like maybe it'll go somewhere and be awesome, maybe it won't. But like, how many of these
Yeah.
places can we get our content? Is one of our
Yeah.
goals.
Yeah. That's where I know one group a couple years ago was, they were doing more IR work, but they had some news that they started getting picked up in Bloomberg, and that was a huge thing for them.
Mhm.
And so having that, like, and I know you are at the NASDAQ, um, right? You are on
Yeah,
NASDAQ,
yeah.
and
We're on Nasdaq, we're on MSN, we're on Entrepreneur, a few sites like that. But there's
mhm.
like we're not on Robinhood. We would love to be on Robinhood. We don't know
Yeah,
how to do that yet, but we're working on it.
yeah, yeah. No, the syndication. That's probably one of the more difficult sides of this, isn't it?
Mhm.
Because it's not just brand; it's the quality of content, the volume of content. It's like it's a lot of things.
Yeah, and they're all one-off biz dev deals, so they're hard. But if you
Yeah,
get them done, like they last forever. So It's
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I know a guy who he helped oil price do a lot of syndication, and he was like, oh, I got him on Yahoo News and this and that, and his thing was like, well, I used to like I'm best friends with the head of Yahoo News, and so it's like it's an easier conversation.
yeah,
um like yeah, that's it's not always easy for someone to get into. So
no,
cool. But awesome, Matt. Well, I appreciate it. This has been super helpful. I love getting your insights into everything. And thanks. Yeah.
yeah, great chatting. Yeah. Anybody wants to work with Mark B, it's markb.com/advertising. We got a media kit. Will's email is on there. Happy to talk to anybody.
Yep. Awesome. And anyone who's in the FMS Pro group, like Matt's in there, you've been awesome. I really appreciate all the
Mhm.
insights and help you've given people and kind of willing to share and talk there. And then we'll see you at FMS in January.
Yeah, we'll be at FMS and highly recommend the FMS Pro group.
Nice.
A lot of value in there.
Appreciate that. Thanks. Awesome.
Awesome.
All
Thanks,
right.
John.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.